Hello everyone. So for today's card, I'm using this Heidi Swap stencil set. It's a three-piece set that I picked up at Michael's a couple of months ago. It was all her stencils were like 40% off. So I picked up a few of the ones I had an eye on. And I love this star set. I've wanted it for so long. So I'm using the striped stencil and then this open star stencil from the set, and I taped down my cardstock with some washi tape that I removed some of the sticky from. You just press it on your shirt and your skin a few times so that it doesn't end up tearing anything. And then tape down the stencils into place. And then I'm using my Delicata Golden Glitz ink, which I love, and my new Tim Holtz mini ink blending tool, which I just showed in a haul video, and yeah, I already love them. They're awesome. So I love how the foam is really good quality. Well, it's the same type of foam as their bigger ones, but because of this little round shape and that it's smaller, I just think they're way easier to use. So I'm totally sold on these, and I'll probably eventually get more of them. But I loved it for this. Even with 2 layers of stencil like this, you're able to kind of like mush it right in there and get right into some of those little smaller areas. So I just kind of went in the direction of the stripes, kind of back and forth, a little bit of twisting, not much, so that I could get the ink in and not move those finer little stripes around and smear the ink. And yeah, it's sponged on just beautifully and it looks so cool. So I did that, and then I wanted to do a second layer. And for some reason I thought I had black embossing paste, but I didn't. So I just made my own. I just took my little licorice gelato and scraped off a bit of it. And you don't need much. I thought I would need more of this because you're mixing it with a white embossing paste. So I was like, oh, to get it like black, you know, I was going to need quite a bit, but you don't need much. I was really impressed with how well this mixed. And the black mixed the best out of the other ones I've kind of played around with, but it didn't take much effort and it just mixed beautifully and doesn't look, I think because it's so black you can't see the little gritty pieces like you can with some of the colors when you mix them. So I don't know, I need to experiment some more with mixing pastes and using pastes, but for this one I really was happy with how it kind of turned out. So I mixed up my black embossing paste and then I smeared some on my card front, which I was a little upset over, but it was an easy fix. I was just going to use the paste right over it, and so I wouldn't have to do a second layer or a second piece of cardstock and sponge over it and start all over. So there's ways to fix it. So I taped down my little template. This one is the Heidi Swap confetti stencil, and taped it down so that it wouldn't shift, and then just grabbed my little spatula dude here and scrape on the embossing paste. And yeah, when you're working with black, it gets really messy. Like embossing paste is just messy in general, which I have a hard time with, but black is even messier. It gets, and when you're working on white cardstock, which yeah, I was kind of creating a mess for myself, but it was fun to play with. I'm gonna have to do it some more. But since I had mixed up a fair bit of paste, not a lot, but a little bit goes a long way with this stuff, so I just kept moving the stencil around to different areas of the card and making sure not to overlap over any of the stenciled stars because they need a little bit of time to dry. But yeah, just kept moving it around and kind of determining where I wanted to add a few little more stars here and there while I still had the embossing paste out. And that's the other thing with this is you work with it while you can, and then you need to take the stencils to the sink and wash them off because you don't want the embossing paste to dry and harden on them because otherwise you are going to have a huge mess, and I don't know if you can get it off after that. So I just worked with it while I could, and once I was happy with it, I went and took everything and washed it all off. And yeah, it's one of those things where I have a hard time with it because, you know, there gets little pieces here and there and it's not completely perfect, but it works, and I just keep telling myself to go with it. So once I was happy with it and washed everything off, I went on to the rest of the card, and I thought I was filming but my camera had shut off, so all I had done was stamped a sentiment from my new Great Birthday Greeting set onto black cardstock with the Golden Glitz ink, and I wasn't happy with how that was going to look. I didn't think it would be like really opaque, but I didn't have any embossing powder that was kind of that yellow gold like the ink, and I wanted it to look somewhat similar. It didn't have to match perfectly, but rather than emboss it, I decided to try and use I had some gold Perfect Pearls powder, and I love how this turned out. It just, look at how like gorgeous and shiny and pretty it is. I just picked it up with a big fluffy brush and brushed it into the ink. Either heat set the ink after you stamp it or give it a little bit of time to dry, otherwise you'll smear it when you brush the powder on. But yeah, you just brush it on and then brush off the excess. And then I just took a Swiffer cloth, you know, like the kind you attach to the Swiffer and use on your floors. And it just picked up all the excess powder around the cardstock so that the cardstock stays black, but the stamped sentiment's all shiny and gold. Oh, I love it. I'm so happy with how this turned out. So once I was done with that, I just took my little mini mister and sprayed some water in the air and then ran the cardstock kind of through it, just like how you'd stamp or spray perfume, you know, and walk through it in the air, just to let it set that powder so that it doesn't rub off, and it was good to go. So trim that piece of cardstock down to the size that I wanted it, and then to adhere it to my little card front here, I'm just using some 3M foam tape. It's just more laziness on my part rather than using a bunch of dimensionals. So a couple pieces of that, peeled her off, and then pressed that right onto my card front. And then I wanted to add a little bit more bling, so I was super happy to realize that the Doodlebug Bumblebee sequins, the darker yellow in them is like a perfect match for the Delicata Golden Glitz gold color. So really happy about how that turned out. So I added a few of the transparent and the opaque ones of that, and then I added a few of the actual like gold ones just for a little bit of extra bling, and adhered those with my Ranger Multi-Medium Matte, which I love that too. I love that for adhering sequins. It dries quickly, it dries hard, so it holds the sequins, and it's perfect. So yeah, so many new products or new to me products that I'm absolutely obsessed with and loving lately. So once I got all those adhered, I grabbed my card front, or my card base, which is a standard A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And scored that, and then to finish the inside, I grabbed the little confetti stencil again, and this time I just used a few post-it notes to mask off around the stencil because I didn't want to smear ink all over the inside of my card, because this time I'm not going to use the embossing paste. I'm just going to sponge the ink again with my little blending tool and the Delicata golden ink. So the post-it notes protected the rest of the card surface there. And yeah, just kind of mushed it in, this time kind of a twisty, dabby sort of motion just to get him into those little detailed stars, and it worked like a charm, like totally perfect, super happy. So yeah, I'm obsessed with the gold ink, the mini ink blending tool, stencils, and that gold Ranger Gold powder, and the multimedia matte. So really, really fun. This was just a really fun card to make, and I made a total mess while I was doing it. You guys should have seen my desk. Anyway, once I had that sponged on, my camera's having a hard time focusing with all this white in the air and just me going nuts. I just grabbed another sentiment from my Great Birthday Greeting set, and this is how I did the first one that it stopped filming for, but yeah, I just used my stamp positioner and got it inked up with the Golden Glitz ink and stamped onto the black cardstock, and then again grabbed that gold Perfect Pearls powder and brushed that onto the ink with this one because it was a smaller sentiment, and I wasn't too worried about it smearing, but with other ones I'd be more careful and either like I said, heat set it or give it some time to dry a bit more so that you don't smear the ink. But this time it worked out perfectly. It's got that adhered into place, and then I'm going to adhere the card front onto the card, and again I'm going to use the foam tape so I can pop it up just to give it that little extra bit of dimension. I love the foam tape for big pieces like this for card fronts, so really glad I got it. And finally at the end here, I'll show the second card I made when I was just experimenting with sponging to see how it would look with the stencil set. I just used the confetti stencil with MFT snow cone ink and then stamped the sentiment right over it with Hero Arts black ink. And the supplies to all that will be linked below in my blog post. I'll link to all the supplies used as always. So check below the video for that. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!